more communication, more transparency, more avenues of communication with the comms director. You know, they can explore more into those spaces and provide more of that information, more of that context. You know, the neighborhood I live in here in Corcoran, we have it's a private Facebook group just because, you know, you don't necessarily want a bunch of other people coming from outside, but for instance, you know, with the City of Corcoran Facebook page where, you know, you can post, you know, let's say you interview, you know, the interviews with the candidate, you post, you know, you make 4 posts, whatever it might be, and you have links to their web pages for more details and stuff like that. Getting more information, making people more informed, and making the information easier to access.
And one of the advantages of a longer voting period is during those dark days, one of the strategies that was used several times was to send out a letter 3 days before the election. And it had a lot of really negative and, you know, false materials in it.
Sure, things that couldn't be refuted.
And it couldn't be refuted in time for the election. So with the longer period, you know, if somebody sends it out before the voting starts, there's going to be plenty of time for somebody else to refute it.
Right.
And, you know, that is an advantage of the longer periods.
I think as far as trying to assess qualified candidates, all anybody has to do is actually go to the candidate forum. And the cream does rise to the top.
Oh, yeah.
Even though I feel like the forum itself should be actually longer. Because I just don't think enough can get covered in the time that the League of Women Voters allocates for that. But I really do appreciate their efforts and how they run it, the forum. But maybe there could be 2 or 3 candidate forums over the course of an election cycle, or 3 months before, or whatever it might be. And I think that there could be more actual questions presented by the voters to subsequent, because a lot of the questions are somewhat screened or prepared in advance by the League of Women Voters. But if you tended or watched online, it was very clear the people who actually understood how a city runs. And there is a misconception by some people in the general population that the city just can do whatever it wants. And it
That'd be
just,
nice.
yeah, it would be very nice, but you got Met Council, you got Hennepin County, you have all these other entities, you have Three Rivers Park, you know, you have the watershed, you have all these entities that actually have a higher, stronger voice than actually the city does. And so I think it takes being a part of the city process to actually even mold that and learn that. And that was very evident to me in the last candidate forum, that there were some candidates who just didn't even understand that.
I think an important piece of education besides educating the residents of Corcoran on their candidate choices is educating the population as a whole. What does a city council member do? Because that might also screen out your qualified candidates, or like attract certain candidates, or have certain people say like, I don't want a 3,000 page.
I mean, that 40-hour monthly kind of commitment, I mean, who's gonna know that thinking they're gonna come in? They think probably, oh, I attend a few meetings, okay, we're good.
That kind of ongoing, I think that could be an ongoing year-round, just like citizenship sort of educational piece that
So
anybody
there's
could
a
benefit.
real
we are
plus.
working towards a citizen academy that we had in other cities that I worked in. It's labor intensive for staff. But that is a goal of ours in 2025 to be able to offer that, to educate the public. And we've also changed up the way that we process some of our information. So the way that we're doing the budget this year is very intentionally broken down by department. So anyone who's interested that attends or watches online can understand how each of the departments work, because each department is briefing. So to understand how the sausage is made in doing city business without getting down into all of the ingredients, you know, keeping it at a strategic level, because that's a thing that people don't quite understand either, is they think that they're gonna come in and maybe they're really good at accounting, and they're gonna come in, they're gonna fix the finance department. That's not the role of a city council member either. It's staying at the strategic, maybe coming down to the operational level, but not getting in to the tactical level of what you do day to day. And in my 8 years of municipal government, that's a learning curve, particularly for new council members, in which they come in very confident in certain competence, and they want to apply that, well-meaning, in ways that they're like, oh, this is where I'm supposed to be operating. And so helping the public understand generally how we do what we do. But I agree, educating potential future leaders. And commissions are great breeding grounds for future council members. I keep promoting that too. You know, we have 3 commissions here in Corcoran and trying to generate interest, because that gives people a look behind the curtain on how the business of city government is done.
Running directly for council without having served on one of those commissions is kind of a red flag right there. I mean, if you have a lot of opportunities to apply for the planning commission. Planning commission is probably the best place, because that's the part that deals with the most complex issues. And if you can get on that for a couple of years, you'll learn a lot.
I'm sorry. It seems to me, when I look at one of the major things that I guess I would question is, what are the issues facing the city of Corcoran? And I think the general population doesn't even understand that. I don't understand it. You know, give me a list of what the top 10 issues are going to be in 2025 for the city of Corcoran. Then I'll have a better idea of what everybody's up against here that's trying to solve these issues. And then after that, give each one of the candidates for office or council members an opportunity to say how they feel about each one of those 10 issues. And then it seems to me you're going to bring together enough information for the average citizen to understand, now I know what the city's up against, what they're trying to solve, and now I know what each one of the candidates' positions are in trying to solve that.
When the city gets into its process of doing the comprehensive plan, it is really an opportunity to have a significant input into the future of the community. That is probably the number one thing, because everything else sort of flows from that.
Okay.
The finances ultimately flow from that, or contribute to that, or are limited by that. The public safety obviously has to support that. So, you know, that vision of what the community is going to look like from a physical perspective is probably the most complex issue. In other words, somebody comes in and says, we want to look like Maple Grove, whole bunch of the community gets turned off, okay? Somebody comes in and says, well, you know, we have what development we have, we want to make sure it's good quality, like they have in Maple Grove. That's a different issue.
So for your awareness, the comp plan, we are intentionally slowing the roll on the comp plan. So 2028 is when we'll really have to reveal the new comp plan. In past years, we probably started work earlier, but Met Council is really pushing some agenda items that are going to call for greater density. And if you watch the last legislative session, so is the legislature. I was up at Capitol Hill a couple times. We're working on that, talking to our electeds, because greater density is going to really mess up our plans.
There's 2 elections before that's going to happen.
Exactly. But if they get it through, I mean, they almost got it through the last legislative session. So for us, we're not going to actually start. We didn't fund anything for the comp plan in 2025. We're intentionally waiting to see how the chips fall in 2025 to start our work in 2026. We've provided initial feedback. 2026 is when we really start our heavy push. Has to be done in 2028. But just for your awareness, if you haven't been part of the comp plan before.
I would just say too, for awareness purposes, I think that's great that we want to make say, we say citizens aware, potential candidates aware. But I think you also alluded to the fact that children move away, but children stay. And so it'd be really nice too, if we put some focus on, educating our children as well, at various age levels, so that they understand what goes on in the community here. And, how the city that they grew up in was run, or should be run, right? And in theory, I think that would probably keep more people wanting to keep this community this way, or maybe they take the values of this community with them when they do move. So,
That is a challenge of having 5 different school districts within our city limits, we're not gonna be welcomed into the classroom to try and have those types of conversations. Whereas when we were in Shakopee and it was one school district, I taught at the high school, open sessions probably half a dozen times a year, just talking about career day and how the city runs. Because most of these other school districts, some of the other students are not in Corcoran. Why is that a school district would feel differently if I came and said, this is how a city runs, and why is that it would say that? No, it's not.
Well, maybe the night to unite.
Yeah, so we definitely try to, if there's other suggestions on how we could potentially leverage that, right now, it's a great opportunity for us to connect. And we try to educate to a degree. But we also are using that as an engagement opportunity to get feedback. So more and more, we're trying to use that to understand what do our residents want. So as we move into the comp plan season, it's going to be a great opportunity for us to get feedback. But engaging the kids, you're right, they're very transparent about how they think and feel about things.
Right. It's unbiased feedback in the purest way, and a good example. So my 12-year-old, he loves to go what we call trash walks. We have grabber nabbers, we have a bucket, we walk along the road and we just pick up trash until the bucket's full, because we want to make our neighborhood, more beautiful.
I hope those are long walks.
Not as long as you like, but they're getting better as time progresses, right? And so for me, it's like, okay, he cares about where he's living, and so I want to foster that, nurture that. He's like, can we go for a trash walk, Dad? Absolutely. Doesn't matter if it's super hot, super cold. I'm all about it, because he cares about where he lives. And so I just want, in theory, if we inform people, we inform them in a way where it doesn't seem boring or exhausting. Maybe the adults too that have their kids would see that engagement. Maybe that could get them excited as well. Because we're not just talking about the people running or just about, the adults, we're talking about the families. And that might become more attractive and maybe engage more people in city government as well, because we're engaging them as a family unit.
So for the ideas, if I could, we don't have another election impacting our city council till 2026. Even if something were to happen and someone were to step down, it would have to be someone recently appointed. Otherwise, they're not going to have enough terms, so they'd be appointed by the council. So if I could ask for we have a new communications person, and I would love lots of ideas. If you've seen, like I took the Buffalo newsletter as an example, if you have other examples of things where you think they're doing it right, and you'd like us to try and adopt some of that same strategy, please drop me a note and let me know so that we can incorporate that. And we've got some runway here. We've got 2 years until the next election to try and incorporate some of these ideas. And also in the next 2 years, we're going to continue to improve our technology so that we'll have better ways to connect. So some examples in other cities I've worked, we've had just online newsletters that residents can sign up for when they're interested. We haven't leveraged that capability here yet, but those are the sorts of things that will help better inform the public and keep them apprised of what's going on.
Speaking of qualified candidates, we have 6 commissioners whose terms are expiring in 2025. They are Gerald, David Hawkinson, Daniel, Buck Holtz, Randy, Megan, and Jonathan. All of your terms expire this coming year, October of 18. We who are serving for longer than that, would appreciate not losing 6 commissioners off of the Charter Commission in one fell swoop. So if I could encourage you to consider reapplying and letting, you know, your term be extended out another 3 years. I know I would appreciate it. I'm sure George would appreciate it. And now Jim would.
There's
appreciate
only
it.
3 of us.
There's only 3 of us left if you all leave us, so.
Lifers.
Oh, my gosh.
What's the best way, Jay, for them to just contact you about that?
Contact Deb.
Contact Deb?
Deb's our point of contact. And yeah, the sooner that we can get that cleared up, if you are interested in
And if
continuing.
if you intend to not apply or run again, we would appreciate knowing that as well, so that we can do some recruiting as well.
And if you're willing right away to, we're appointing, we're coming up early part of the year is when we do the appointments.
Right.
And so if we have clarification right away, that allows us to know how much we need to recruit. We need a minimum of 7 on the Charter Commission and a maximum of 15.
How are you doing on the planning commission?
Planning Commission is good. Parks and Trails Commission, we will go down by 1 because one of our commissioners was just elected to council. And we need a watershed commissioner and a deputy watershed commissioner desperately.
What are the qualifications for watershed?
Willing to learn.
Well, and go to the meetings and represent the
Yeah,
interests
need
of
to
the
represent the
community.
interests of the community. But anybody, we have a great, our new engineer and development superintendent has a lot of experience with the watershed, and they're going to be the new staff rep for that. And so they will be at the meetings. You won't be flying solo, whoever that is. But I was trying to recruit a replacement for Ken since February, when Ken told me that he was going to be going. We thought we had someone, we weren't able to close the deal. And so now poor Tom Anderson, who just wants to retire.
And they meet once a month?
Yes. Yeah, Watershed meets once a month, need a commissioner and a deputy. It's going to be brought up again on Thursday. We're in desperate need there. And then however many Charter Commission members, and then potentially 1 Parks and Trails Commission member.
Do you want to talk about the incorporation and?
Oh, yeah, so I included a document just for your awareness, because I'm a history buff, but I also like to have our paperwork. So if you'll see there, this document from Steve Simon, Secretary of State, dated November 4th, I just wanted to let you know what that was. So from time to time, we're asked to provide documentation demonstrating when we were incorporated as a city and to support for different applications and such. And it's been frustrating that some people have questioned the documentation that we provided, or there's been differing dates. And so I contacted the Secretary of State and they said, well, there's this date and there's this date and there's this date. Which date do you want? I said, all of them. I'd like you to validate all of them because it shows Corcoran's story. Corcoran didn't just become a city. Before it was a city, it was a village. And before it was a village, it was a township. And before it was a township, which became the day that Minnesota became a state, it was a territory since 1855. I'm having trouble with the paperwork since 1855, but I was able to get the Secretary of State to put in one document all 3 of our important dates that demonstrate Corcoran's life. So I was pretty excited about that because they told me they wouldn't do it, and they wanted, no, you got to pick a date, which date? And I'm like, no, all of them are important. All 3 of them tell our community's story.
Thank you for that, Jay. I
Yes,
appreciate
that's very awesome.
Yeah.
that.
Thank you.
And I noticed that they did define us as a home charter city.
Yes.
That's important. Okay. I don't know if there's a difference between our unfinished business and the new business we've been talking about.
I think we blend them together. So
Is that okay?
yeah, that's,
Is there any other new business, unfinished business that you'd like to discuss?
Did we table the ward
I would say that. I
Kind of
agree
left
with-
that up in
I
the
would-
air.
I would agree with Jonathan. I think, if you want to use the word table, that's
Or-
fine, or put
I
it
didn't
on,
know the figure of speech. here.
Yeah. put it on the periphery. I think it should always be something that we may want to
Back
discuss.
burner.
Yeah.
Just-
I think initially when we first started talking about it, we were thinking of trying to get ahead of a potential problem.
We have it in the works, but.
But
not
I'm not
finished.
sure that, I'm not sure getting ahead of a problem that doesn't necessarily exist is necessarily getting ahead of a problem. You know, so, I think after really, cause I've been really talking about this or pondering it for 4 or 5 years. And, you know how you keep thinking about things and more things come to light as you do that. And for me, what really became more prominent in my mind was the qualification of the candidates and having truly qualified people. And I know that we can take a whole evening and discuss what does it mean to be qualified. I think there's a difference between being qualified to be able to run and qualified to actually serve in that capacity. And like I mentioned, all you have to do is watch the candidate forum and you can see the people who actually understand how government works and how others might just seemingly might have an agenda. But with that said, I feel like anything we can do to help elevate the understanding of the constituents in our community on where the candidates are, what their backgrounds are, what they backgrounds in terms of service and so forth. Where they may land in some of the issues, I think those are all very important things. And if we can put some mechanisms into place or add to the mechanisms we have is probably a better way to say that. We would then serve our city in a very good way that way.
Quick question for those who are parents. When I was in Shakopee, the school district there did a mirror voting at the different precincts where the kids got to come in and they voted too. Has that ever happened for your kids? That might be something really interesting for us to explore for 2026. I worked one of the precincts because I was in my role, I was partnering with the school for children's education. And it was really cool to see these young people come in with their parents on election day before school and cast a vote. And then we provided that information to the school district, to the civics classes, so that they could have the social studies classes, so they could have conversations about how people voted and why they voted that way. And it was pretty neat.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah, I
Yeah, you have to be careful that you don't do it too far ahead or your pollsters would be looking at the school records.
That's good, George.
Those kids are gonna mirror pretty closely what their parents are saying.
But I think what that does is that fosters the conversation between the parents and their kids to explain the why, right? I'm voting for this candidate, why? Oh, because they have this position, why, right? It's the 5 whys. And we all know kids love to say why, right? I think that's fantastic.
It sets a precedent of civic
Yeah.
opportunity or privilege.
Yeah.
I saw a lot of people say civic duty. I like to frame it as my civic privilege because it's a privilege to be in a country. I was serving in different countries where I got to watch them do an election for the first time, and you see people who get to exercise their voice for the first time in democracy. It's inspiring.
You ever see them dip their fingers in?
Yeah, the purple. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, we have 4 Haitian refugees living with us right now. They've been with us for 14 months. It's part of the Biden administration policy for helping Nicaraguans, Cubans, Ukrainians, and Haitians because of the unrest that's happening there. And it's amazing how when you grow up in a country where you have freedom like we do, sometimes you can actually take it for granted. But it's been good to be able to have them with us to teach them what what it really means to have civic responsibility. And yet, and civic, privilege in a sense too, you know, it's just not necessarily right as much as an honor and distinction to be able to have these freedoms. And so, it's something that, when you grow up in it, sometimes you don't value it as much. And having them live with us and the hell on earth that they had to go through, not just from the gang's perspective, but so much money has been dumped into Haiti by other countries, US included, as well as benevolence from, you know, different churches or benevolent, you know, tax exempt ministries or whatever. And so much corruption is there in the government, and it always ends up in the pockets of the elite. And I'm just grateful that, you know, we have a system in place here that we can change things if we don't like who's in power. And not everybody in the world has that. And so it's something to be thankful for. Anything else that anybody'd like to bring up in new business? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Okay, Jim
Jim,
and
Randy.
Randy?
Yep.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same. Hearing none, thank you for the
Thank you.
quorum. And thank you for the good discussion. And,
And thank you, Jay, for your
Yes.
insight.
yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you for
Yeah.
the call.